When we think about what makes a nation powerful in the 21st century, it's increasingly about its digital autonomy. Today, we're diving into a concept that's right at the heart of this new reality, sovereign AI. And let's be clear, this isn't some theoretical idea anymore. It's fast becoming a critical national strategy for any country that wants to control its own destiny.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to start with the why. What's this global rupture that's forcing this whole conversation? Then we'll clearly define what the sovereign AI strategy actually is, unpack why it's so important, and lay out the 5 essential pillars for building it. After that, we'll look at some real-world examples of this in action, and we'll wrap up with a clear, actionable policy roadmap. All right, first things first. To really get why sovereign AI is such a big deal, you have to understand that the very ground beneath our feet is shifting. We are in a completely new geopolitical reality, and the old rulebook, well, it's been thrown out. I think this quote from Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, just nails it. He wasn't talking about a temporary blip. He called it a fundamental rupture. That stable, cooperative global order that we all got used to, it's gone, and it's not coming back. And here's the real kicker that comes from that rupture. Something that we always saw as a good thing, global trade and economic interdependence, has been weaponized. Major powers are now using supply chains, finance, and trade as tools for control and coercion. What was once a source of collective strength has now become a major vulnerability. So in this much more messy, much more contentious world, how does a nation deal with something as powerful as artificial intelligence? This is exactly where the sovereign AI strategy comes into play. It's a necessary third option. So what is it, really? At its core, sovereign AI is a national game plan to own your technological future. It means building and, more importantly, controlling your own domestic AI infrastructure and capabilities. The whole point is to cut down on your dependency on others, whether that's foreign superpowers or the handful of giant tech companies, the so-called hyperscalers that currently run the show. But what are the real-world benefits here? I mean, why would a nation pour massive resources into this? It really all comes down to 4 key drivers. The first, and maybe the most crucial, is data sovereignty. This is all about making sure your nation's data, your citizens' health records, your government's secrets, your company's trade secrets, all of it stays under your laws. It's a direct countermeasure to foreign laws with long-arm jurisdiction, like the U.S. SEAL Act, which can basically force American companies to hand over data no matter where in the world it's stored. The second driver is all about economics. Let's face it, a nation's data is an incredibly valuable resource. A sovereign AI strategy makes sure that the insights, the discoveries, and the intellectual property that come from that data actually fuel your own economy. It's about keeping the patents, the innovative new companies, and the profits at home, instead of just exporting all that value somewhere else. Third, and this one is absolutely non-negotiable, is national security. When you control your own AI systems, you can use your own cybersecurity talent to lock down your critical infrastructure, your power grid, your financial systems, you name it. It's an essential shield against foreign spying, and especially against the kind of sophisticated misinformation campaigns that are now a constant feature of modern conflict. And the fourth driver is about preserving your culture. Think about it. If every AI model in the world is trained only on data from a couple of dominant cultures, guess what values they're going to reflect and promote? A sovereign approach is the only way you can train models on your nation's unique languages, its history, and its social norms. It's how you make sure that AI understands and aligns with your country's specific identity. Okay, so we've covered the why, those 4 big drivers. Now let's get into the how. Achieving real AI sovereignty isn't a single action. It's about building national capability across 5 foundational pillars. This is the strategic roadmap. And these 5 pillars are all connected. You start with smart regulations. That policy framework allows you to achieve true data sovereignty. That secure data then fuels a domestic ecosystem of AI models. But you can't do any of it without a deep bench of local talent. And none of it even gets off the ground without the foundational hardware, the compute resources themselves. You see how each one builds on the last? Now, let's be realistic. This slide lays out the tough reality here. Pulling this off is a huge challenge. For regulations, it's that constant tightrope walk between ensuring safety and not crushing local innovation. For data, it's about getting real legal separation from foreign laws. For the ecosystem, you've got to somehow grow local companies that can compete with the global giants. Talent, that means massive long-term investment in skills and jobs. And compute, well, that means getting your hands on incredibly expensive hardware through supply chains that are, frankly, geopolitical battlegrounds themselves. But here's the thing. Even with all those challenges,
This global shift toward sovereignty isn't just a PowerPoint strategy, it is already happening. Let's look at some real-world examples. Look at Canada and Germany. These are two like-minded, powerful nations, and they've launched a sovereign technology alliance. This is a very smart strategic play. They're pooling their resources, building up secure computing capacity together, and working as a team to reduce their reliance on the bigger players.
And then you have the sheer scale of investment in hardware. The UAE has developed a new AI chip packing 4 times trillion transistors. Now, to put that number in perspective, that is way beyond what's available on the market today. This isn't just a science fair project, this is a strategic move to build their own AI factories and create a real hardware alternative to the foreign companies that have a stranglehold on the GPU market.
And you know what? Even the big hyperscalers are getting the message. Amazon is pouring nearly 8 billion euros into a new EU sovereign cloud. They claim it's totally separate, physically and legally, and run only by EU citizens to meet Europe's tough data rules. Now, of course, the skeptics are still worried. They say as long as the parent company is based in the US, laws like the Cloud Act could still be a threat, and that only complete separation truly works.
This quote from the CEO of HPE really points to the path forward on the technology side. The old way of just plugging into a few giant centralized clouds is being seriously questioned. He argues that the real path to control and sovereignty is through hybrid and distributed systems, architectures that actually give nations real autonomy over their data and their digital future.
And that brings us to the most important part of this whole discussion, the policy roadmap. So what are the concrete, actionable steps that leaders and policymakers need to be taking, like right now? The roadmap really comes down to this. You have to foster a local ecosystem of AI vendors to build up your domestic capabilities. You need to invest heavily in resilient local infrastructure, those AI factories we talked about. At the same time, you've got to team up with trusted international partners to build collective strength. You also have to make sure that investment is laser-focused on creating local jobs and developing advanced skills. And finally, governments and local industries must make it a priority to actually use the local infrastructure they've built. It's a feedback loop that creates a truly sovereign ecosystem.
So we end with this final thought. When you look at the reality of weaponized trade, the critical value of data, and the absolute need for national security and cultural identity, the question really isn't if a nation should go down this path anymore. The real question for policymakers is, can you possibly afford not to? In this new global order, AI sovereignty is looking less and less like an option and a lot more like an absolute necessity for survival.